19 runs scored on 21 hits. Did the New York Mets just find the perfect combination for their starting lineup?
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Now, the New York Mets finished off their 4-game set in D.C. with an emphatic victory, an incredible offensive day as the Mets scored 19 runs on 21 hits. They went 10 for 17 with runners in scoring position. And the crazy part, they did most of their damage late in the game. Through the first 5 innings, the Mets were only winning by a score of 3-0. In the second inning, Mark Vientos and Brandon Nimmo each got base hits. Francisco Alvarez doubled in a run, and then Jeff McNeil had a great at-bat where he fouled off 6 pitches, went from being down in an 0-2 count, worked the count full. Then on the 10th pitch of the at-bat, he hits a sacrifice fly that drives in the second run of the game. So you see the Mets, 2 returning players in Alvarez and McNeil, put the team up early. And I really thought that was going to be the story of the game, because then 3 innings later, McNeil leads off the 5th inning with a solo home run, his first of the season, a ball that he crushed, 105.1 miles per hour off the bat, deep into right center field, traveled 420 feet, just an absolute shot off of his bat. And the Mets were again being carried by their pitching early on. Griffin Canning had a really nice start, gave up 4 hits, walked 3, yet did not allow a run, struck out 5. He didn't go deep in the game, but if he is just an elite 5 and dive guy, I'm all for that. In the 5th starter in your rotation, he has been outstanding this season. And you saw 3 consecutive innings in the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th, where he gave up 2 base runners and wiggled his way out of a jam. Got a big strikeout with a 1st and 3rd situation in the 2nd inning. 3rd inning, he gives up a leadoff single, issues a walk, so there's 2 runners on, nobody out, gets a strikeout, then gets a tailor-made double play ball with Francisco Lindor playing basically on the bag. Ball hit right to him. It was as easy of a double play as you're ever going to get. 4th inning, gives up a leadoff single, gets a fly out, again issues a walk, but gets a pop-up and a ground out to get out of the inning. And then finally has a 1-2-3 in the 5th, where he struck out 2 batters to end his day. Just a great start by Canning. 90 pitches, didn't have complete command of the strike zone, but was able to make big pitches whenever he needed to. 56 strikes. Just a really solid start. And, the Mets lineup, again, scores 3 runs early, so you're sitting there 3-0 lead. I think Carlos Mendoza was not going to run the risk of sending Canning back out there for the 6th inning, even though the Mets scored 3 runs in that inning on a 3-run homer off the bat of Brandon Nimmo. But even at a 6-0 lead, he wasn't going to risk having another meltdown like they had throughout the series. So Max Kranick went out there. I think the initial thought was, let's see how many innings you get out of Kranick. Can you get through the 6th and the 7th with Max Kranick? They pitched a solid 6th inning, but then the Mets absolutely exploded in the 7th. Francisco Lindor got hit by a pitch twice in the same inning, which never happens. And that just shows you how many guys came up to bat in that inning. Lindor led it off with the hit by pitch. Soto doubled. Pete Alonso got a base hit that scored Lindor. Jesse Winker walked to load the bases. And after Mark Vientos struck out, Brandon Nimmo had a banner day by hitting a grand slam, just the first time in his career that he's had multiple multi-run homers in the same game, counting for 7 RBIs to put the Mets up 11-0. The Mets load the bases again as Alvarez and Acuña each singled. Lindor got hit by a pitch again, like I mentioned, but ultimately they ended up ending that threat with only 5 runs scored. I say probably only isn't the best word to throw in front of that, but after 5 runs scored, as Jose Azocar pinch hit for Juan Soto, which is funny because the other day my dad pointed out, I mentioned that there was never a situation where you want Jose Azocar to bat for Juan Soto. But in this specific occurrence, when you have an 11-0 lead and you can get Soto some rest at the end of a game that's in hand, makes sense. Azocar grounds out to end that inning, and then the Mets are able to send out Jose Urena to pitch the mop-up duty. And while he did have a little bit of a shaky 8th inning where he gave up 5 runs on, 7 hits, a couple of home runs, didn't really matter because the Mets just kept tacking on. First of all, 7th inning, he did pitch a scoreless frame, and the Mets went on the top of the 8th inning. They loaded the bases for Brandon Nimmo again. This time he rips an RBI double down the right field line to score 2 more. Jeff McNeil picks up his 3rd RBI of the game with a ground out, and Luisangel Acuña picks up his 1st RBI of the game with a base hit. So 5 more runs scored by the Mets. After the Nationals got theirs in the bottom of the 8th inning, the Mets got to square off against old friend Ahmed Rosario, making his first career pitching appearance of his career, and they tack on 4 more runs, 3 of them coming on a home run off the bat of Mark Vientos, which you might think is easy coming against a position player. It's not necessarily easy to take a 44-mile-per-hour fastball, if you can even call it that, 44-mile-per-hour lobbed in batting practice ball and drive it out dead center. But that's what Vientos did, and the ironic part about it, he took an opportunity out of Brandon Nimmo's hands to potentially get the franchise record for the most RBIs in a game because he tied Carlos Delgado, and had Vientos just drawn a walk, would have been another bases-loaded situation potentially for Brandon Nimmo. Instead, Vientos gets the big home run for himself, and Nimmo is just left to laugh as he walks up to the plate knowing that the only way he's going to get the double digits in RBIs in a game is hitting his 3rd home run of the game. That doesn't happen. But the Mets cruise to a 19-5 victory. And the best part about it was the fact that Max Kranick threw that 1 inning and the rest of the bullpen got to rest. Yes, Jose Urena has a ERA of 15 after giving up 5 runs. But you know what? He threw 68 pitches, got a save for pitching the final 3 innings of a game. If you're not aware, if any pitcher pitches the final 3 innings of a game, regardless of the score, if the team is winning the whole time, they get a save. So an ugly save in some respects, but also a huge boost to this bullpen. That's one of those games where at the end of the season, you might be like, wait a minute, Jose Urena was part of the Mets this season, but that's a big one. That's a huge performance from a guy when, again, it's not like he did too much, but just to shoulder that burden so no one else had to pitch, that can have a huge impact going into the next series, which we are going to talk about in the final segment. A preview what lies ahead as the Mets return home to face the Diamondbacks. But first, I want to spend a little more time on Brandon Nimmo's monster game and also have the Mets unlocked their perfect lineup moving forward with Jeff McNeil in center field and Luisangel Acuña getting the bulk of the starts at second base. I want to talk about how that configuration has this team absolutely loaded 1 through 9 in this lineup in a way that I haven't seen in a long time for Mets teams. Even the team last year was not loaded like this 1 through 9. It's a pretty impressive lineup the way they're able to structure it if they continue to roll with this group. I want to explain why a little bit more in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios, one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feel fuller, longer. I love the no shells varieties, and every time I pick up a new flavor, I feel like I found my new favorite flavor. I never tried the salt and pepper. Got at the store the other day. I got to tell you, it's got a nice little kick to it, a little bit of spice, but so good. I love these. Now it's moving on my list of favorite Wonderful Pistachios. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, don't worry, they do have the in-shell options for that classic favorite. Get snacking and cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. Also, if you're liking the video today, throw a like on it and leave a comment with your take. Do you like this lineup with Jeff McNeil in center field and Luisangel Acuña getting more starts at second base? Do you think they should flip those two guys, or should they just roll with Tyrone Taylor in center field? Personally, I am a big fan of this lineup. I really think that this unlocks so much for the New York Mets because all of a sudden, if you just look at the structure of this lineup, the top three is as good as any team has in baseball with Lindor, Soto, and Alonso. And they haven't even reached their absolute peak because while Lindor and Alonso are off to great starts this year, Juan Soto has not been the Juan Soto that he is going to be. I'm not even just going to say the Juan Soto from the past. He's going to be Juan Soto again. He is going to have a stretch at various points throughout this season where he can absolutely carry this team, where he can win games by himself. So you have that group 1 through 3 that is so dangerous. After them, they haven't gotten the production that you would have wanted because the DH platoon hasn't worked out great so far this year. Starling Marte has not had the best of seasons. Jesse Winker has had his moments, but hasn't been great altogether. I really liked Winker in the cleanup spot for this game because I think it just gave you a really solid veteran at bat in the middle of your lineup. It broke up Pete Alonso and Mark Vientos, and it allowed Brandon Nimmo to slide down the lineup a little bit. Maybe Nimmo's just not a cleanup hitter, and that's okay because you know what? You can bat Nimmo in the 5th or 6th hole where if there's a lefty on the mound, maybe you go Mark Vientos in the cleanup spot and have Nimmo bat 5th. And if there's a righty on the mound, maybe you stick Jesse Winker right in that cleanup spot and do what you did in this game where you go Winker to Vientos to Nimmo. All of a sudden, Mark Vientos and Brandon Nimmo are starting to perk up a little bit, and that is going to take this team to a completely different level. This game was obviously historic for Nimmo. Again, second time in franchise history, the Mets have had a player drive in 9 runs in one game. Carlos Delgado did it against the Yankees in 2008. He became the 3rd player, though, in MLB history to drive in 9 runs in a 3-inning span. The only other 2 guys who have done it, Sammy Sosa and Pudge Rodriguez. So pretty good company he's keeping there. Second player ever to drive in 9 runs in the 6th inning or later, joining Mike Moustakas, who did it in 2015. Pretty impressive day for Nimmo. And you look at what that one day did for him and his stats. It vaulted him into the top 10 in the National League in RBIs, top 15 in home runs. He's now tied with Pete Alonso for the team lead with 6 homers. And he went from a 576 OPS going into the game to a 679 OPS, more than a 100-point jump. Huge day for Nimmo. Reminds me of the game against the Braves last year, where I can't remember how many runs he drove in. I think it might have been 5, but regardless, I think a multi-home run performance in Atlanta that really kind of sparked him a little bit. Hopefully this is going to do that for Nimmo because he's had a really rough start to the season. But I feel like through all of it, his at-bats haven't always been terrible. Like he has hit the ball hard, just right at people. Maybe he's going to start to round into form, and that is such a key piece in your lineup, especially if he's batting 6th. It just gives you such a deep and long lineup, especially when Mark Vientos starts going as well. He's on a 6-game hitting streak, and he's hit safely in 12 of his last 13 games. Throughout that stretch, he's gone from a 393 OPS to a 688 OPS in 2 weeks. So huge strides that Vientos has made. He's hit 3 homers during that span as well, so he's starting to come alive in the power department. It's a really good top 6 in your lineup, and we knew that all year long that this team had that potential to have a really good 1 through 6. But now what you're seeing with Francisco Alvarez back and Jeff McNeil able to play center field, you're seeing as deep of a Mets lineup as we've looked at in years because you've always had a hole in center field for the most part. When Nimmo was playing center field, the Mets did have a good offensive unit out there, but they didn't have Juan Soto in the lineup. Like the 2022 Mets had a really good lineup top to bottom because you had Mark Canha and Starling Marte and Eduardo Escobar all have good years, and obviously Lindor and Alonso did their thing. Jeff McNeil had a career year. Who caught for that team? James McCann and Tomas Nido. So the catching department wasn't as strong, and that's where you look at this team and you say, man, look, whether it's Torrens or Alvarez, you're getting a good at-bat in the lineup. In center field, Jeff McNeil, he's a lot better offensively than Jose Siri and Tyrone Taylor. Now, defensively, sure, you're going to take a little bit of a step back. But at the same time, now that I'm seeing it and I'm watching it play out, Jeff McNeil can play a fine center field. Is he going to make the incredible catch where he runs from right center field and catches the ball in left center on the warning track and makes a diving catch? Probably not. But is Jeff McNeil going to cut off every hard hit ball from stopping and getting to the wall? We saw him a couple times where balls were hit hard in the gaps. he has no problem getting to them because Jeff McNeil has outstanding instincts in the outfield. He gets great reads. I think that's why the Mets ultimately have gone this direction to start McNeil in center field and Acuña at second base, because Jeff McNeil has way more outfield experience than Luisangel Acuña. He doesn't have the athleticism of Acuña, but he gets really good reads. He's going to throw to the right base every time. He's just a smart, high IQ baseball player. So even though he's not going to win you any game in center field, he's not going to lose you any game either. And a guy that can win you a game at a position is Acuña at second base, because Acuña has shortstop range at the second base position, and him and Lindor at the middle, the more they play together, the better they're going to get. This could be the future of the Mets infield for the next 6 years. It really could be. Acuña is such a talented defender in the infield. I think the gap between Acuña and McNeil at second base is clearly a larger gap than they felt the gap would have been from Acuña's athleticism in center compared to Jeff McNeil, because McNeil can erase some of that athleticism gap with just his experience, his reads out there. And so again, you're ultimately looking at these two positions. I think the Mets have made the right decision that Jeff McNeil seems fired up to be playing center field anyway, is going to do well out there. And I think that puts McNeil in a better position offensively too, because I think it's just for him, the outfield seems to be so natural to him where I don't think he has to think much. In a second base, I think there's a lot more on his plate. Acuña thrives at second, so now you have that component where I think defensively it works, even though some thought, how can McNeil play center? I'm telling you, this makes a lot of sense to me, and I also think it makes more sense than sliding Nimmo into center field, because you got to protect Brandon Nimmo, who still is dealing with plantar fasciitis. It's not where it was last year, but it's not a foot injury that just goes away. It's still something he has to manage, and he had a knee issue in spring training. So they want to manage his workload, and if you want to almost 2x a guy's workload, have him play center field, because he has to back up every single play. Every play that's hit the left and right, the center fielder's on the move. So instead, you have Jeff McNeil running around there for the first 7 innings of the game. And then as we've seen, late in the game, depending on where you're at in the lineup, the Mets can sub in an outfielder. It could be Jose Azocar, but most of the time it's going to be Tyrone Taylor. And Taylor can slide in, play center field. And if the Mets want to, depending on where they're hitting in the lineup, let's say Acuña made the final out, if they want to, they can bring Jeff McNeil into second base and put Tyrone Taylor in that spot in the lineup. If Nimmo made the last out, they can slide McNeil into left and keep him in the game. McNeil made the last out, they can just take McNeil out and put Taylor in. So they have so much roster flexibility the way they're doing this. And then you just look at what the bottom three of that lineup provides for you offensively. You got Francisco Alvarez, who clearly has more pop than Luis Torrens. As much as Torrens came through in so many situations with runners in scoring position, we've seen what Alvarez can do offensively when he's right. And I still am on the edge of my seat waiting for that breakout season where Alvarez really cements himself as one of the best all-around catchers in baseball. He's already a top 10 catcher in the game. Last 2 years were just baseball. The consensus among our leadership team that votes on this, not just myself, has been to put Alvarez in the top 10 as one of the top 10 catchers in baseball. But I think he could be a top 5 catcher in baseball. I think he could be right up there with the Cal Rallies and William Contreras of the world as being one of the best in the game. I still believe that wholeheartedly. He's 23 years old. So having him back is a big lift, and it just upgrades your backup catcher position, because now Torrens is the best backup catcher in baseball. So that spot is secure in the bottom third of your lineup, where there's always going to be a competitive at bat in there. And then you have Jeff McNeil batting eighth, and McNeil, since last year, second half, he was unbelievable. Like a lot of people forget, because his first half was so awful, how good McNeil was in the second half in a 40-game sample, where he had an OPS over 900 and hit, it was like 7 home runs and 7 doubles in 40 games. I mean, he really unlocked his power. You're seeing it. You're seeing his ability to drive the baseball. Had a home run and a triple in this game. Granted, the triple probably could have been caught by the left fielder Alex Call. A rough day out there. But still, McNeil has the ability to give you a much better at-bat than Tyrone Taylor does. And then you can always make that switch. And then the 9th hole is the perfect spot for Luisangel Acuña. And I'm getting to the point with watching this kid play that I just think the Mets need to almost set it and forget it. Have him in the 9 hole every day. And you can find playing time for McNeil in center field. And you know what? If it works and Jose Siri's healthy and you come to a point where you're either just carrying Siri as a pinch runner, defensive replacement, or not even playing him, or I don't even know. But to me, this could be the lineup that the Mets roll with all season. Like that's the potential it has. You'll need Jeff McNeil to be a real threat offensively, but I think the thing that just carries it for me is just what Acuña can do for your ball club in the 9-hole and starting at second base. Defensively, I've already talked about the value he brings. In the 9-hole, he's perfect because he gets on base, he is a threat to score every time, and he gives your top of the lineup an incredible opportunity. If you got 2 outs in the second inning and Acuña gets on base, he turns the lineup over, and if Lindor doubles, he's going to score. And even if he doesn't double, he might steal second base, and Lindor can get a single, and then he scores. So he just gives you such a threat to score runs at the bottom of the lineup and turn it over. And 1 through 9, this team does not have any easy out that the opposing pitcher can get a break on, where Tyrone Taylor comes up, with all due respect to him, because he has been swinging the bat better as of late. But still, I would rather attack Tyrone Taylor than Jeff McNeil. I just would. So I feel like the Mets have maybe found something here. I'm excited to see them continue to lean into this. When you have a lefty on the mound, it's easy. Acuña starts at second base, Tyrone Taylor's in center field. When you have a righty on the mound, in my opinion, I'd start Jeff McNeil and I'd start Luisangel Acuña at second base. And I'm on the verge of just saying, make Acuña an everyday player, because he is going to impact baseball games one way or the other. And when he's doing what he's doing right now, which is hitting for a 280 average, he's a really good player for this ball club. We'll see, though, what the Mets do moving forward. There will be a lefty on the mound tonight as the Mets square off to take on the Arizona Diamondbacks. I want to preview that series, so we'll get to that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 bonus today. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure to become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service. We get updates from me anytime news breaks from the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways. If you want to be Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, the Arizona Diamondbacks are coming into town, and they're on a little bit of a skid lately. They've lost their last 3 series, 2 of them at home, where they faced off against the Rays and the Braves on their most recent homestand. And then the series before that homestand was one in Chicago, where they lost to the Cubs. All 3 of those teams are playing good baseball right now. The Braves obviously got off to a rough start, but they're starting to turn a corner a little bit. The Rays have been solid all year, and the Cubs have one of the best teams in baseball. So I would not look at that and then look at the Diamondback 15-12 record and think, oh, are they really that good this year? This is still a good baseball team. They have a plus 12 run differential, and they've been better on the road than at home this year. 8-8 at home, 7-5 on the road. They have a great offense, 3rd best in OPS in Major League Baseball, 4th best in runs scored, 4th best in home runs. They have, on the pitching side, a pretty bad staff currently. 7th worst in team ERA, 8th worst in start ERA, 8th worst in reliever ERA. But they have some really dynamic arms in that bullpen with AJ Puck and what's the closer name? Justin Martinez, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Justin Martinez, who's just absolutely disgusting. 0.90 ERA so far this season. He's been lights out. And then you have in the starting rotation side of things some big names the Mets are going to see this series that haven't gotten off to a great start with Corbin Burnes and Zach Gallen. The guys who have absolutely been aces in the past and certainly can lock in at any time. So this is not going to be an easy series. I also wonder if the Diamondbacks carry a little bit of animosity with how their series or how their season ended last year, waiting at home to see if the Mets or the Braves would get swept in a doubleheader. Didn't happen, and they came a game short via tiebreaker and lost. So now I'm sure they're going to have a little bit of an extra chip on their shoulder coming into this series. The good news for the Mets, it's getting played at Citi Field, where the Mets are 12-1 to start the year. The first pitching matchup we're going to see is a pair of lefties, Eduardo Rodriguez versus David Peterson. We know how good David Peterson has been throughout this season. Eduardo Rodriguez, after a pretty much lost year due to injury last year in his first year with the Diamondbacks, starting off this year healthy, which is the first big thing, and definitely throwing the ball pretty well. 4.40 ERA, but he has a lot of strikeouts. Gave up 4 runs in 2 of his 4 starts in April. This is the last start in April, so we'll see if he finishes it off on a strong note. He's definitely a dangerous pitcher that can, get locked in and really limit your lineup, but he also is prone to making some mistakes. And hopefully the Mets are in the position to capitalize where maybe a Mark Vientos can come through and keep his power streak alive. Alonso, Nimmo, Soto, Lindor. There's a lot of guys that can tag Erod for a homer, and that could be an early key in the game just to get out to a quick lead, especially with the Mets still being in a little bit of a strange spot with their bullpen. Granted, Jose Urena really helped, and they've now gotten 2 days off for both Edwin Diaz and Reed Garrett. So if it is a close game, you have the guys that you want ready to go and rested to get those big outs late in the game. Max Kranick maybe doesn't pitch because he just threw, but Huascar Brazaban working on a day off. He should be good. Ryan Stanek as well at the day off. Danny Young. So the Mets should have a pretty rested bullpen. They could always, if they want to, get another arm for Jose Urena. They are going to need a starter on Wednesday to square off against Corbin Burns. The expectation is Brandon Waddell, which I did not know his name was pronounced like that until I heard Gary say that during the broadcast today. But Brandon Waddell is expected to get that start on Wednesday. The Mets could go to him early if they want to. They could have him take Urena's spot and be available out of the bullpen just in case they need him, and then always figure out a spot starter later. Or they can bring him up on the roster and just basically have him wait to make that start. Or the other option, they can send Urena down, call up a Tyler Zuber, Kevin Herget, Austin Warren. These are guys that are on the 40-man roster that I don't think the Mets would mind burning, because if you option them up for a day or call them up for a day and then option them back down to AAA, you can't pitch them or you can't call them again for 15 days unless there's an injury. I think those are guys the Mets would not mind burning an option on to just have a fresh arm for a game. And then after Waddell makes his start on Wednesday, if they wanted to, they could then bring up Daniel Nunez to give them another high leverage arm in that bullpen, which would then necessitate a decision the next time they face the Diamondbacks, which is next week, where they will once again need a 6th starter in their rotation to go in front of Kodai Senga. Do they, at that point, go with the bullpen game? Do they keep Waddell on the roster the whole time and never call up Nunez? And that way Waddell can make both of those starts? Or do they figure it out later and just call on a different starting pitcher to make a spot start? And then if you had Nunez on your roster, at that point in time, you'd have to make a decision whether you DFA an arm to get a spot starter up or whether you had to option Nunez right back down. So the Mets are in an interesting spot with this bullpen where I still don't know exactly what the pieces are going to be that are going to complete this puzzle over the next couple of weeks. But Urena was a good example of how a guy can come up and make an impact in one day and then be off the roster in the next. So I imagine the Mets might start to do a little bit of juggling to get through this stretch coming up here. No off day this week, so they're going to have to get creative. And I think they have the right front office to do just that and navigate these waters and hopefully continue to win series. I mean, they didn't win the one in DC, but hey, considering how bad those 2 losses were, they still salvage a 4-game split with a victory like we saw on Monday. Pretty impressive stuff, and hopefully they can keep the good times rolling at Citi Field for this series. Again, this first game, David Peterson versus Eduardo Rodriguez. Then game 2 is going to be a little bit tricky with Corbin Burns going against Brandon Waddell. Imagine that might be a game where the Mets would lose, and if they do, at least they have the right guy on the mound for game 3, where Kodai Senga will be going up against Zach Gallen. So a good chance here for the Mets to win another series, keep the good times rolling before they hit the road for, I think it's going to be a pretty tough stretch going to St. Louis and then to Arizona. So we'll see what the Mets do, but definitely encouraging performance by them on Monday. I'm excited to see that lineup, get some more games under the belt and see if this could be the spark that leads to the Mets finally having the offense we anticipated coming into the year. And you just hope this pitching, despite the adversity they're about to face, can continue to be the foundation for a really good winning ball club. It's been good start after good start after good start. It's David Peterson's turn tonight. I'll be breaking down everything we see in this game and what will lie ahead throughout the rest of the week on tomorrow's edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you all for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out Locked On MLB Game Night. This is our show that takes you around the league to all the different games that were played with insight from all of our local hosts on each team and a couple of hosts who will bring you through the action wire to wire, everything going on in Major League Baseball. If you want to check out Locked On MLB Game Night, you can find it on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel as well as the Locked On MLB podcast feed.